Welcome to Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Our guest today is an investor and author who purchased his first real estate investment at the age of 18. Since 2004, he's helped thousands of real estate investors create wealth and passive income through real estate. He's also the host of the top-rated passive real estate investing podcast. Marco Santarelli is the founder of Norada Real Estate Investments, a nationwide provider of turnkey cash flow investment property. Marco, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Seth, it's an honor to be on your show. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for your time, and I'm really looking forward to our chat. So, to a viewer who has never met you before, what are you all about in real estate? Like, what's your goal in getting into real estate investing?
What was my goal to get into it personally, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're taking me back to when I was essentially 18 years old. My goal was basically this. I get asked this question often, when did you start and why? And sometimes people are surprised that I actually started investing when I turned 18 because they're thinking, well, how did you figure out what you wanted to do or how you could even invest in real estate at such a relatively young age? The fact is that I looked around and I noticed that people who had wealth or created wealth actually owned real estate. And you wouldn't know them by looking at them. They're like the Millionaire Next Door book type people driving a Ford F-150. But when I got to know them or when I learned about them through my parents at the time, I realized that they owned single families, duplexes, and fourplexes in various parts of the city where I lived in. And I thought, geez, these guys don't really need to work. They're creating wealth. I thought, okay, this is the way to go. And so I set my initial goal, and it wasn't a written goal, although I really tell people you should write your goals down, be very specific about it, make it measurable and attainable. But I jumped in and I bought my first rental property, which was an end unit townhome in the city of Calgary. And I think I paid about $40,000 for it, but that was really my first goal per se of getting into real estate. And as they say, the writing was on the wall thereafter.
Yeah. So how is that? You saw everybody who was that millionaire next door. They own property. How has that initial jump in changed to where you are now? Like, what's your current goal for your real estate portfolio?
Well, I've bought and sold properties over the years, and it's been many years since I bought my first property. So my goals change every year. In fact, we're recording this on December 31st. And so what I do at the end of every year is I do a massive review of my goals, and I look at what I've written out for the year before, and then I review and rewrite my goals for the coming year. And so, it's always an analysis. So 2019 is definitely a year I plan to buy more real estate. It's like every year I'm buying more real estate. So without going into great specifics, I plan to acquire probably in the neighborhood of 200 to 300 units this year, which sounds like a lot, but when you break it down, it's really a combination of single families, strategically located, potentially duplexes and fourplexes. But I plan to do a lot more in terms of syndicated deals, meaning that I will be syndicating small to medium-sized apartment complexes, which will be available to investors out there, our investor network, and other investors who want to invest passively with inside other people's deals, so they really don't have to do it. But being a general partner in those deals allows me to be also an investor, and those are units I count towards my goals. So a combination of my own personal single families, duplexes, fourplexes, along with syndicated deals, will be somewhere. My target is 1,000. But I want it to be over 500 this year. So that's a lofty goal for, I think, most people. But just given the deal flow that I see and the network I've built, it's doable. And so it's really a win-win situation because it's not just a win for me. It's helping a lot of other people also do the deals that I'm involved in. And that's what real estate's all about. It's having the right team and it's having the right network.
For sure. Is there a reason why you chose to go with the unit count rather than a dollar volume? Everybody's a little bit different. Some people say I want to own 2,000 units. Some people say I want to own 10 million. What was going on in your head?
Yeah, that's a good question. The reason I go with the unit count is because you don't need to get into fine specifics about let me rephrase that. if I said I wanted to buy a unit in Southern California where I live here, or one unit in Indianapolis or Kansas City, we're talking a magnitude of difference here. So I can get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in one of those cities, or any of the 22 markets that our company is in, where our investors buy through us in other markets, between 100 and 150,000 for a 3-bedroom home. In Southern California, that 3-bedroom home is 700,000, 800 or more. You're in Toronto, you know what I'm talking about. You're looking at a million.
I can sell you a cardboard box on the corner for 800,000.
Right. You can't even get a garage, right? Yeah. So the thing is it's hard to talk in dollar terms because it's market specific. Like if I wanted a 3-bedroom home in Southern California and I was talking in dollar terms, let's call it 700,000, $1 million. Well, I can get 10 houses in Indianapolis for that same dollar volume, and that's 10 units. So it's better to talk about number of units and have that inside your box of what your criteria is and define it that way. And here's the other reason. This gets a little more technical. When I look at real estate, I look at it from a price, a rent to value or rent to price ratio, which means if I'm buying a $100,000 home, ideally I want my target to be $1,000 a month in rent. It's 1% of whatever that acquisition price or the value is at that time. So you can't do that in California, for example, and many other expensive markets. So I set out knowing what my rent to value target is. So it doesn't matter what market I buy in or what price I'm buying at, whether it's a $50,000, $100,000 or $200,000 home. I know that my rate of return, my cash on cash return is going to be X because of that rent to value ratio. So I'd rather look at it in terms of units and make sure that the units I buy meet my criteria, for example, my rent to value ratio or my cash on cash return requirement, and then it doesn't matter. Price doesn't matter. It's really just the number of units.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. So you're really gunning for your unit count and then that return. That's a really good way to frame that. So along your long real estate journey since you started at 18, what are some of the things you've done along the way to really help you hit those annual goals?
What have I done along the way to help hit those goals? I would say the first thing that comes to mind actually is just constant and never-ending education. Never stop learning. They say the more you learn, the more you earn. I find that there's a lot of truth in that. And that's why I have these 10 rules of successful real estate investing. My first rule is educate yourself. Never stop learning. Always continue to build what you know. A lot of that comes from experience, but it's just amazing how much education there is out there, whether it's videos or audiobooks or podcasts or just, physical books, whatever it may be. So continually educate yourself. That helps. Even if nothing else, just helps you think a little different and sets your mindset. It goes a long way. And number 2 is really just taking action. Now, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question actually, but
yeah, no, you're good. Keep going.
All right. So really just taking action. And here's another thing. I like to classify people in 3 categories. And I tell my wife and my daughter this all the time. There's 3 kinds of people in the world. There's those that make things happen. There's those that watch things happen. And then there's those people who wonder what happened. Yeah. And so I always try to keep myself in the first category. And I used to call this the MCH long time ago, which means make crap happen. You just got to get out there and make things happen. And, buying property comes down to 2 things. You can educate yourself and never do anything, but it's important to have capital and credit. Now, you can work on your credit and build your credit so you can qualify. And that's, another topic we can talk about. But the cash thing is a lot of people have investable cash. If you don't, save as much as you can, as fast as you can. And if that's hard to do, find yourself another income stream, change your career, change your job, because what you want to do is accumulate as much investable cash as possible, as fast as possible, and then go broke. And what I mean by that is you want to spend it or invest that savings that you've accumulated quickly into the right deals and basically go broke right away and keep accumulating another stack of cash to invest into the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. And if you have a challenge doing that, find yourself a partner, because you could be a credit partner, you can find the deals and bring in a cash partner, and you can just do a 2-person partnership or a 3-person partnership with people and that way you can get into the game relatively quickly.
Yeah. And like you said, it's all about taking action. I think we both can think of people where, they're stuck in that analysis paralysis forever. They go to all the seminars, but they never end up buying a deal ever.
That's right.
So taking that action is a huge first step. And, real estate's trial by fire. You have to get in the deal to start. That's where the real learning begins, right? So
yeah, well, yeah. There's experiential knowledge and education, and then there's textbook and academic type of knowledge, and you really need both.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to your goals, do you do something maybe daily or weekly to help keep your goals top of mind? Do you have any routines or rituals?
Not really. I hate to say that, because for most people that's not a good answer. But the reason I say that is because I've gotten so accustomed to self-motivation that I don't need to motivate myself. I naturally get out of bed motivated, because I'm working towards the goals throughout the day that I want to work towards. When I hit the pillow, I'm thinking, as I am drifting off to sleep, of what I want to do the next day, of what I need to do and what my challenges are. And so thinking about that, at the end of the day, sets me up for the next morning. So when I get out of bed, I know exactly what I need to do and what my challenges are, and what targets I need to hit for that day. And that's just a habit. Okay. So it's not like I'm rewriting my goals like some people I know do every single day, which is not a bad habit, by the way. You can do it weekly, and that's very powerful. But for me, it's just being clear on what I want to accomplish and thinking about it during the day and at night, and then hit the ground running the next morning. I think if you build that momentum, it's hard to stop. It's the people that kind of fall off the wagon and have a hard time getting back on it, because they get discouraged because friends and family are telling them, that's dangerous, that's risky, that's unreasonable, that's unattainable. Those negative people, you need to put them on the side or get rid of them. But as long as you stay focused and be true to yourself and be clear about what you want to do and what you want to achieve, don't let anybody get in your way. That's horrible, because they're just stealing your dreams.
Yeah, I think that is some of the best pieces of advice you can give to somebody. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody's out there, they're thinking about getting into real estate, and like you said, there's all these detractors around, people saying, oh, it's risky. What sort of mindset can that person adopt to kind of drown out all that noise on the periphery?
I think just being absolutely clear and having a vision of what you want to achieve. You need to be able to. I think the term is called future pace. I'm not sure if there's actually a term, and if I'm not mistaken, Tony Robbins talks about it, where you visualize yourself a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, and where you're going to be, and what your life looks like, and who you're with, and what you're driving, and where you're living. If you can clearly visualize that with full color and clarity, and see that and feel it and smell the smells, and just be able to touch, what it is you see in your mind, and then work that backwards, that I think is the first step. A lot of people create themselves a vision board. They'll put a board in their bedroom or in their office, and they'll put pictures of what they want: this house, this car, this lifestyle, this. These are all material things. Shouldn't all be material, but you are constantly feeding your subconscious mind what it is you want to have and do and be. And be is a big part of it. It's not just what you want to have. It's at the end of that long sequence is what is it you want to be. Yeah. So that's the first step, I think. And then literally writing down clear, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic goals that have a timestamp on it, and breaking those down into smaller and smaller goals where you can literally make a checklist and say, okay, I did this today and check the box. And then I did this today and check the box. And then I did this today and check the box. that makes it easier. Some people set this big, lofty goal, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But then there's nothing in between where they are today and that goal. They don't see that first step. There's no staircase. It's just all they see is the cloud in the sky and nothing in between. There's no way to reach. There's no ladder to climb to get to it.
Yeah, no, that makes a total sense. So let's talk about a deal that was a Keystone deal for you. Do you have in all the units you've acquired, is there one that stands out that was either transformational for you as an investor or something that really took you a lot closer to your goals?
Well, there's probably a number of them. There's probably a few. I always say that the first deal that I bought, as small as it was a major transformation, because I learned a lot from it. You learn a lot from that first deal that you do, and you also learn a lot from the second and the third, and you keep learning, but that first one really cuts your teeth. That first deal, I believe, was about $40,000. This was, many years ago. So it needed some work. I bought it. I did some renovation, leased it out. There was no internet back then. So, it was a yard sign and some paper applications. And I interviewed these people that filled out the application. And I never done any management before, property management. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I just kind of wung it, or, I winged it. But I learned a lot from that experience. But, a couple things that I did learn from that whole experience is that, number one, in time, equity happens. If you buy right in the right neighborhood and you have positive cash flow, which is critically important, the equity will grow in your property through the amortization and the appreciation. And I didn't think about it too much at that time because I wasn't buying to speculate. I was buying because I knew I needed to just own something. And I was really kind of half blind. I jumped in head first, and I just thought that, okay, I know I could do this. I believed I could do it, and I did it. And so it just happened. But equity will grow, and it happens. And then when you look back a year or 2 or 3 years later, and you realize, wow, this was a great experience. I should have done 2 of them or 3 of them or 4 of them at the same time if I could. Yeah. So that was, a major turning point, because that put the writing on the wall, and I realized, okay, this is not only doable, but it's for real. It works, and it's replicatable. It's like rinse and repeat, and you can keep doing it. And then the other thing I learned from that is that cash flow is absolutely king, because I like to refer as cash flow as the glue that holds your deal together. Because if you've got a tenant that's paying down your mortgage and you've got enough cash flow to cover all your expenses, and you have a little left over, which is your net income, your net cash flow from the property, then what you have is you have something that's generating an immediate rate of return. You have cash flow every year, which is spendable money in your pocket, which I suggest you invest instead of spend. And you also have equity that grows over time, which is what I was just saying. And then the third thing I'd say about that first deal, which is a good takeaway, if you will, is, in fact, I actually just mentioned it. It was doable and repeatable. But the biggest lesson I learned from that is the mistake I made is I sold it. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 years after the fact. I sold it for about $80,000. I probably walked away with $30,000 at that time in my pocket. And that was a big chunk of cash. And I thought, wow, I just hit the jackpot. It felt good at the time, but in hindsight, I look back and I realized, you know what? I just killed the goose that laid the golden egg, because the equity, whatever you do with it, that equity, which you realize and put into a bank account or you spend, is here today and potentially gone tomorrow, but now there's no more cash flow and the growth stopped. So not only did I stop my cash flow, but I stopped my equity growth. That means the lesson learned is never sell your properties. You can exchange them. You can do tax-deferred exchange. You could leverage up and grow your portfolio. You could do all kinds of things. That doesn't mean never sell, but never sell for the sake of selling. You sell for the sake of repositioning or growing your portfolio. And I didn't realize that at the time. I thought, oh man, I have all this equity. Let's take it out and let's do something with it. And I did, and I don't even remember what the heck I did with it.
Well, you're 20 years old at that point, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I was just young and dumb, but
yeah,
um, never sold. I mean, that was a major lesson from that first deal. I think the two things I learned is that it was doable, repeatable, and never sell,
yeah.
because you kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
For sure. So you're 18. You're about to buy your first place. How do you come up with the cash, and how do you even get financing for it?
Well, I started working. I started a real job, not the paper, like a newspaper job, which I did have early on. I started working at 16. I was actually working in a grocery store, major grocery chain, and so the income was pretty good. I mean, I was paid very well on a per hour basis, and I was working a lot of hours, so I was able to bank enough to, to come up with the down payment. Um, so that part wasn't that hard for me, but like I said, regardless of what you do or how much you earn, the key is to just earn as much as you can and then save as much as you can as fast as you can, because you want to build up those chunks of cash and turn them into streams of cash.
For sure.
So that's the cash part. The credit part, I had reasonably good credit, and once you turn 18, I was able to qualify for mortgage financing. So that was the key there, is that, that's why 18 was the magic number for me, is because I didn't decide as soon as I turned 18. I knew before that I wanted to get into real estate, but I had to wait until I was 18 to qualify for financing. And then also where I worked, I was a member of their credit union. So they were able to give me a loan, in part because I worked for the grocery chain. So it's not like it was a given thing. Obviously I had to qualify, but it was just a little easier than me just walking into, an institution, large bank, and saying, "Hey, you don't know me, but I'd like to get a mortgage."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And especially that, lending has gone so tight these days. You can't just walk in to a bank and expect somebody to give you a mortgage.
right.
Well, one of the things you mentioned before was the system, making it repeatable. What are some of the systems you've put in place to allow you to build your business to where it is now from that one property starting point?
You're talking about the systems for me to continue to buy, or from a business perspective, like?
But both. I'm just looking for, because it's impossible to grow at a high rate of speed without any systems in place. Whether it's how you acquire the properties, if you have a lead system there, or if you have a certain system on, I only buy 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, because you can like hammer those out any day of the week. What sort of things have you standardized?
Well, you have to fast forward to 2003, and in 2003 and 2004, I got back into real estate investing in a big and hard way. I hit the ground running. I jumped in 2003, educated myself, started networking. I really started building it as a business for myself in 2003. In 2004, two things happened. I accumulated 84 units, 84 doors in less than a year. I was buying a lot, I was buying it quickly, and I was buying it 3,000 miles away. I was living in Southern California, which I still am, but I was investing in other markets from Florida all the way up to Michigan. And I had to create a system in order to be able to do that. So I was investing heavily. I needed to create systems in order. Now I stumbled and fell and made mistakes and lost a lot of money in the beginning too, but I learned quickly, got up and made it work. What was interesting is what I had created for myself ultimately became Norada Real Estate Investments, the business we have still to this day, where now we help other investors do what I did in the beginning, and it's completely systematized. So I don't know if I really had a criteria right from the get-go. I developed that over time. I realized when I first started, I wanted to buy everything. It didn't matter what it was. I wanted to buy everything. But then I quickly realized that was a mistake, because if you buy in the wrong markets, that's a mistake. If you buy in the wrong neighborhoods, that's a huge mistake. if you don't buy with cash flow, or you buy distressed properties that are, let's say, rent ready but not in good condition, you're basically buying yourself a money pit, like the movie. So you're buying yourself deferred maintenance, deferred repairs, large capital expenditures, capex expenses. And so I didn't think about that back then because I really didn't know about that stuff. I just, like I said, jumped in and started buying a lot real quick. But I figured it out quickly, turned it into a system, defined what my buy box is, where I wanted to buy and why, and the neighborhoods I wanted to be in, and ultimately that came down to like what I'll refer to as B plus, A minus type neighborhoods. Back then I was buying some stuff in A class neighborhoods, and stuff in like C minus neighborhoods, which, are pretty sketchy at times. And so I've had my fair share of problems with those, including, drug dealers and a shooting in front of one of my properties and, all kinds of nasty things.
Yeah. Stories, good stories. That's what those are.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, you look back and you realize, man, how was I so dumb in doing some of the things I did? But you have to learn from your experiences because it makes you a better, stronger person and investor. And so those are the lessons that, we just use today in the business when we work with clients and advise them and sell them properties in other markets, because we can say, these are good and here are the reasons why. These are not so good and here are the reasons why. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to the investor, like you, me, or whoever it may be. What is it that you're trying to achieve? What's your objective and your goal? And let's create a criteria to define your buying box. And we'll let that be the guide. That's the lighthouse that guides us into what to buy and where to buy it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's say I'm an investor, just getting into real estate. And I know that real estate is good because I read lots of things, saying real estate's a great vehicle. Can you share some examples with us on how real estate has changed your life, whether it's financial or, anything else? Like, how have you benefited from investing in real estate?
Wow. The simple answer is it just provides, look, at the end of the day, I wanted to say financial freedom, but that's really a means to an end. The real reason is time freedom. You've probably heard this saying before, but just being able to do what you want, when you want, on your own terms, it's ultimately about time, not so much money. Yeah. So if you have enough income to cover all your expenses and then some, what that gives you is the ability and the flexibility to do whatever you want, whenever you want. Give you a quick example. This is a recent example that's happening right now. We're in the middle of this major remodel on our house. We literally gutted the house, pretty much down to the studs, flooring and everything, tore down walls, and we're on the tail end of it now. But in an effort to try and button everything up before Christmas, but now before New Year's, I spent the last 2 plus weeks, not in my office, not working on my business, not working on real estate, but just wearing t-shirts and dirty clothes, working like a contractor in my house from early morning to late evening, basically just installing, wiring and TV and, touch-up paint and this and that. I've been able to do that because I don't have to be at work every day and punch a clock and do that kind of stuff. Like I have enough income coming in that it covers the expenses and I don't have to worry or sweat or panic or, have anxiety attacks. So it's that time freedom, the ability to be able to do the things you choose to do because you have that financial independence that comes from having built a portfolio of real estate and passive income investments that feed that lifestyle. So you start with the lifestyle and you work it backwards. What was your question? Went off on a tangent.
That was a great answer. Just how you have benefited from your real estate investments and time.
Right.
You can't buy it back. But once it's gone, it's gone.
No, you could burn cash. Like you could burn cash and make some more. You could earn or make more money, but you can't. The one thing you can't get back is time. It's the only thing you can spend and never get back. And it's gone forever.
Yeah.
So really, that's at the heart of it. Is time freedom, not so much financial freedom.
Yeah.
So that's why I encourage this. This is why we put out, and you're doing the same thing now, but this is why we put out so much free content. With our podcast, the occasional videos that's going to be ramping up, articles, the upcoming book, the reports that I write, is really just free education for people to learn how change their mindset first, and then learn how to start building these income producing assets that feed your lifestyle, that build up what you want to build. Remember, these are just vehicles. It's not the be all end all. You don't buy real estate for the sake of buying real estate, or because your neighbor's got a bunch of property and you think you should do the same thing. Why are you doing it? You got to ask yourself, what is my end goal? And for most people, without actually articulating it, most people really just want that ultimate freedom to be able to do what they want when they want. And I call that time freedom. But to get to that point, you need to be able to cover your living expenses. You got to pay your rent, you got to buy your groceries, etc. And the only way to do that is to have 5 or 10 houses or doors, 20, whatever it is, to get to that point. And that's our goal, actually, as a company, is to help. I call it our mission, not our goal, but really is to help as many people as possible achieve financial independence through real estate as the vehicle.
Yeah, no, well said. So, Marco, where can people find you? You were talking about some content you're putting out. Where can people find your stuff?
The best place to go, and where you can find links to everything else, is our 2 websites. Our what we call our money site. Basically, our core website is noradarealestate.com, NORADA, noradarealestate.com. Most of the properties that are available through our company and in 22 markets is on that website. And the other website, and these 2 websites link to each other, is simply Passive Real Estate Investing. And passiverealestateinvesting.com is actually the home of our podcast, which is a top rated podcast on iTunes, and I believe Stitcher and iHeartRadio. And that's just Passive Real Estate Investing. So passiverealestateinvesting.com.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to put the links down below so everybody can just click on those.
Thank you.
So Marco, just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your real estate success with us today. I really appreciate it.
Seth, it's been a pleasure being on your show, and I wish you all the best in 2019, and good luck with the launch of your show. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. And to our viewers, I wish you well in your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.